1 million children have been taken out of public school since 2019, with parents deciding to teach them at home instead. The rationale for many is the lack of resources and worries about school safety. But a census survey found a noticeable spike in one particular group of families that's also citing racism and critical race theory. ABC's Steve Osinsami traveled to Birmingham, Alabama, where parents worry that soon schools won't be allowed to tell the truth about the history of racism.
7-year-old Tyler Thomas, his 11-year-old sister Zoe are just like most other children in America because they're running late for school this morning.
Excuse me.
Their mother, Joella, needs coffee. The kids need breakfast.
Just drink it real fast.
And it's time for them to go.
Time to start school. Let's go, Ty.
But they don't have to go very far.
Okay, I need this down because today we're going to start with language arts first.
Homeroom is in a room upstairs at home in the suburbs of Birmingham, Alabama.
Contractions. Remember, we worked on contraction last week.
And since the pandemic, more than 1 million other American families have joined the Thomases, who've decided to pull their kids out of public and private schools and teach their children themselves. In the school year that started in the fall of 2019, there were about 2.5 million homeschool students in America. By the next school year, deep into the public health crisis, it was 3.7 million children. For the school year that's starting now, an estimated 5 million American children are getting their basic education at home. Something's clearly happening.
I really believe it's growing because people are seeing the difference. One of my reasons, though, of homeschooling is because you're at school all day, and then we got to come home and do homework. And you've already been at school all day, and then your child is exhausted. What part of speech have we talked about? We talked about it last week. And being at home, I can get school done in 3 to 4 hours versus doing 7 hours in a building, and then I can teach my children where they are. I'm talking about learning styles. We can play our song, and it's super easy and super quick. When you look at the school system, there's a traditional way of learning. Everybody is learning the same way, but are we the same?
No.
We're different. My brain process is different from where your brain process is. I am accountable to Zoe and Tyler. They were the gifts I was blessed with. So I want to do everything I can as their mother, along with their father, to give them what they need and what, not what the system is saying they need. SE, very good.
She tells us that the needs of her children are a little different, in part because they're children of color, which helps explain something else that's new. While the U.S. Census reports that the number of families choosing to homeschool have jumped in every group, there was one group that stood out.
If our child was in school, we would be getting called all the time.
Really?
Because he would be labeled, he's bad, he's too busy, he's not a great listener, he's not focused, and all these things because he's so busy.
Here's a hot take. If you have a message inside you that people are meant to hear, it'll never make the impact that it truly deserves.
In Birmingham alone, there are now enough Black parents homeschooling their kids that they started a new community.
By the way, if I'm going to be on TV, make sure you give a good side. I'm just kidding.
With more than 200 children.
Just in the last month, we've had 43 new members join our community. Just
in the last month?
In just the month of August.
I just want to let people know that we're not anti-school. We're pro a different option.
The kids grow up together.
Yolanda Chandler and Jennifer Duckworth are the mothers who lead the group and call themselves the Black Homeschoolers of Birmingham.
Jamari.
My youngest son lasted until first grade, but he was actually a victim of racism in kindergarten, first grade. You know, we had an incident where I just got called to the office one too many times. I was one of those parents who was there all the time. You know, I was actively involved with the school. I knew then when I got to that elementary school and I could see his little face through that glass sitting in that principal's office, that I was not going to give them the opportunity to break his spirit.
Right.
And that we walked away from that day and we never went back.
They told us they've seen way too many scenes like this one at a school in Orlando, Florida, where police hauled away a little Black girl in the first grade after an assistant principal said she started kicking and screaming over sunglasses she wasn't allowed to wear. And they say they're sick and tired of seeing kids running for their lives at school.
Our goal is to create a safe space for Black and brown homeschoolers to learn, play, and grow.
And there's so many of us out there in the community, all over the country.
Exactly.
They also share that they don't like some of the new changes to what's being taught in traditional classrooms. Some of them aren't quite comfortable with their youngest children discussing gender identity issues. And on the other side of the group, there are other parents who worry that schools are now being told to stop teaching the truth about racism in America. And they point to these 23 states that either have new laws on the books or are considering new laws that would make it illegal to teach lessons that were just fine a few years ago about sex, gender, and racial history.
I believe the curriculums is whitewashed, to be blunt.
One of those states is theirs, where next year lawmakers are expected to reconsider rules that would prevent schools from teaching what some are calling divisive concepts.
On September 15th, 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church was dynamited.
And these families are offended that teachers could be told not to tell the true story of what happened to Black people in Selma, Alabama, or during the Montgomery bus boycotts, or when former Governor George Wallace famously stood in the schoolhouse door trying to stop the racial integration of state schools. Today, one of the people defending this idea of avoiding divisive concept in schools is this man, the first.
Stop it right there so we can get into our discussion and come back to it if need be. But Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones, welcome to Breakdown Friday. We are talking about homeschooling. Is homeschooling something that's viable, that's actually really viable for Black people? Is it something that it's just a temporary thing? Is a temporary spark? It's cool now. Is it something that could help us long term? Is putting your children in homeschool better than putting them in private school or charter school or even public school? Like, what are the pros and cons of homeschooling? Are Black parents capable, willing, and competent enough to teach our own kids in the homeschool atmosphere? These are questions and things that we're going to explore as we have our discussion about the viability of homeschools for Black people. We're also, I want to look at some of the conversations that have been going through social media as well about the dismantling of the education system, the reading proficiency of Black boys. Is public school good? Still good? It's just still something that we should be like really putting our children into, and how many of us have the means to actually homeschool our kids? So let's dive deep, let's explore. And so PC, I'm gonna start with you, man. I know Pat, the homeschool expert right now. You know what I'm saying? Because he, Pat has helped co-found at homeschool. And they've been, how many years y'all been running?
It's been close to 10 now, like 8, 9.
So, so he had some real experience in this. But, PC, I want to start with you. You're an educator. You're a college level educator, and you get the kids after the homeschool or after they have been reintegrated back into public school, or if they've just been in public school that whole time. In your opinion, do you think homeschooling is something that's viable and effective for Black Americans?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And first of all, let's just, make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe to this.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
We're tired of y'all, 45, 50, 60, sometimes 100 of y'all watching, and y'all don't hit the damn like button.
You better hit that button.
Hit that damn like button. All right.
If you don't hit that like button, you ain't African American.
Right.
Like Joe Biden said.
Or Black or more or let me say.
I'm gonna clip that up. I'm gonna clip that up. We can clip that up. That's gonna be the new like thing. If you don't like this video, you ain't African American.
So, but I was serious about that. Like, share, and subscribe though. But so Black parents from my generation, my childhood, Black parents did do a form of homeschooling. My mother read to me and my sister when we were young. I mean, she would pick Bible stories to read. She would pick, she would read books of adventure, things of that nature. So my mother read to us and taught us how to read before we were even old enough to go to kindergarten. So that was a traditional thing that Black people did. It wasn't until Black people decided to get modern, and then we decided that we're going to push our children and make the sole responsibility of their education and academics be placed in the school settings. That's one. Is it beneficial? Definitely beneficial, because as a people, and Malcolm X said this, only a fool would send their children to the enemy to educate them.
Right.
So why are we consistently, proudly pushing our children, shoving our children out the door? And now to the point where we not only want the schools to teach our children, we want the schools to raise our children, teach them manners, teach them etiquette, things of that nature. And then we really aren't even astute to what actually takes place in the classroom. So when I first became a high school teacher back in 2002, right? One of the things we had was professional development days. And during one of the professional development days, we had a training. During this training, we learned the reason why classrooms are set up the way they're set up, with the chairs in straight lines and straight rows. It had nothing to do with the academics. The reason the chairs were in straight lines and straight rows is because that was the easiest way for the custodians and the night cleaners to come up and clean the classrooms. So we still put the children in those desks and ask them to sit there all day long. When you're talking about children, rambunctious, full of energy, and Black children, specifically Black boys, have shown to have more energy than any other demographic, and they get punished for it. And they have to deal with consequences for it. And then they're also ostracized. I can't tell you how many children that I worked with as a mobile therapist that I had to get a phone call from their parents saying, listen, my child just got locked up, arrested, because he was accused of sexually assaulting somebody because the girl touched his behind and he touched her behind, as children often do sometimes. They do touchy-feely games.
Mm-hmm.
And now the boy, 7 years old, for the rest of his life is labeled as a sex offender. People will literally have to know where he lives at for the rest of his life. So getting our children out of those places and environments where the statistics show that at a ratio of like 6 to 1, Black boys are punished more than any other group in the schools. That Black boys are pushed to athletics and things of that nature and not pushed to excel scholastically and so forth. How even when I was in high school, instead of being given the or being directed to take the higher levels of math, basically we didn't go too much further than algebra 1 and then general mathematics.
Right.
In terms of the qualifications to graduate. And so what I see on a college level is that we have to sort of, and even as a college professor, I had to reteach people how to write. So we go from whatever the lesson was to, for the next week or so, we got to work on grammar. For the next week or two, we got to work on being able to identify appropriate ways of putting together a paper, the bodies, the outlines, and then we have to understand how the different parts of putting this work together. And so for the majority of the semester, I actually did 2 jobs. I taught my lesson, and I also taught them things that should have been a prerequisite prior to them graduating from high school. This is on the college level. So seeing parents take that step to teach their children, and they're absolutely right. if the academic day shouldn't be no longer than 3 or 4 hours. They stretch those hours out so people can, we'll get into that particular part. Basically, so people can have an 8-hour, 6 to 7 hour job a day. The academic part doesn't take that long. And being able to teach the children, if you know your child, you know when your child needs a break. You know, sitting still all day is not going to work. You just fed these children breakfast. So you know that they're going to be full of energy. They got to work some of that off. Black children in particular have been shown that they are more proficient when they're able to have the freedom to move from station to station, when they have the freedoms to learn through actual experience and the work, kinesthetic learning. So I think that when you take those things into consideration, you can actually personalize the academics more. And we know we talk to Pat all the time about his experiences. So I'm gonna let Pat dive into that. But I got a brother in New York who's also been doing homeschooling network all over the country. My brother Q Butter, who runs the Ziax Institute out of Brooklyn. So, and focusing on STEM, been a part of at least 3, maybe 4 all Black science fairs, where you get to see the genius of these children at work, and you get to see when they're unobstructed from really learning and being creative, how productive and creative our children can be. So there was a few more things on there, but I'll land my plane right there for now.
Okay. So I look at my brother's early education, and then I look at some of the children that are in my homeschool. I mean, that are in my Black history school. So my brother went to a African-centered school called Youth Development. I believe that was the name of it. When he left, we went to preschool, and then he went to Youth Development for like a year or 2 before it closed down, and then he went on to elementary school. But by the time I came out, it was closed down, so I just had to go straight to elementary school. But he always had an academic advantage on me being able to go to that school because of the things that they taught him, which was like a homeschool co-op program. And then, like I say, I look at the children that are in my Black history school, and all the kids are brilliant. But it's something different about the homeschool. And I've had conversations with people that I know who've either homeschooled their kids the whole time or part-time, or even up to high school homeschooled their kids. And you can see the academic advancements that they have. So I am for homeschool. I even want to homeschool children when I have them. I want to teach my kids. I want to do the homeschool thing. And I give you my reasons and stuff in a minute. I just like, throw out the cliffhangers and tell you what I'm thinking a bit. But Pat, from your experience, working in the homeschool, your time there, you deal with kids who are, as a track coach, you deal with kids who are homeschooled, aren't homeschooled. You wasn't homeschooled. So what do you think Black people should homeschool their children? And if so, is homeschooling something that's viable for Black people?
Well, the answer is the only answer that you can really ever give to a complicated question, and that's it depends.
Okay.
Homeschooling has a ton of benefits. PC went over some. The clip you shared went over some. You hinted at some in your cliffhanger. There are a lot of benefits to homeschooling. There are also a lot of downsides to homeschooling. And I think people have to be real about that. And you kind of got to be creative, because homeschooling, in the way that most people think about homeschooling, is a luxury that most Black folk don't have. Mm-hmm. The ability for a mom or a dad to sit at home with their kids and educate them on various subjects. That's right. A luxury. But that being said, you can still do it. You just got to be creative about it. You don't have to teach your kids in a 3-hour block in the middle of the day. Like, if your kids are home, you can teach them whenever there's a lesson that props up to be learned, 15, 20, 30 minutes in the evening. And then another 15, 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour later. And then another 15, 20, and instead, maybe instead of learning about the stars and stuff, you go outside at night, go out into an area where there isn't a lot of light pollution, and you point up and you give your kids that sort of visual learning. So there are creative ways that you can engage. And I say that because I hear all the time a lot of parents saying, I don't have the resources, be it time, be it income, be it whatever, to homeschool my kids. Right. You just got to be creative. But it is time intensive. It's a lot more time intensive than sending your kid to school. That being said, I don't think homeschooling is the only option, because I see a lot of homeschool kids who come into our program and they're so naive and so sheltered and so ignorant because their parents taught them that the one truth that their parents knew.
Right.
And so when you present another one, I've seen these kids break down. And so, the critical thinking piece, teaching critical thinking isn't as easy as we make it out to be. It really is a skill to it.
It is. And you got to develop it.
Yeah, and that's why we have these homeschool co-ops all over the place. But even those things oftentimes require a different way of approach. So it's just a different way of schooling. And the way that we're cultured nowadays, I'm not sure if you're looking for a situation where you can just drop your kids off with some black folk and they learn, and then you basically want the public school style process structure in a homeschool type environment. Depending on what type of black person you are, that might not work. But if you're a parent that's already like, when my kid come home from school, I'm talking to them about what they learned. I'm exploring that with them. We processing that. We deconstructing that. I'm already heavily involved. Then their homeschooling might really work for you. There's also the other angle of, and this is one thing where we got to be real about it. As black people in America, your children's education needs to look different. It needs to have extra components to it. And unfortunately, one of those extra components, in my opinion, is exposure to racism. Now, we need to measure when we expose, but we can all agree public school is very good at exposing black kids to racism.
Well, we saw that in the clip.
Yeah, it's very good. I think that's healthy. That's beneficial, because from my perspective, education is about preparing your kids for the adult world that they're going to get into. And every black person in America is going to experience some form of racism in their adult life. I feel confident saying just about all of us. So that's why people get caught up with these Negro wake-up calls.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is it depends, and we can go a bunch of different ways, but I've seen a tremendous amount of success in black homeschool kids that come into the program, and once we unlearn them, because there's a term in homeschooling called unlearning, where you basically break down, you got to strip all of those habits and ways of learning and ideas they picked up in public school. You got to strip those away from them before you can really start to educate them in a way that is conducive to the homeschool environment. So once you strip all that away and you have this raw kid in front of you, now you can pour into them in ways that a traditional public school teacher, actually, this is the first year we've had a public school or somebody from a public school setting come and start teaching with us at the homeschool co-op, because it's also a private school now. And even for the teachers, it's like mind-blowing, the things they can do, the way they can access the kid, the way that they can interact, that like not being tied down by rules, regulations, testing requirements, and all of that. So it really is a revolutionary type of style of education in this modern time. Not that it's new, but it's a return to the old, but it's still a shift. Like we're still moving.
Right.
And
Right.
it's a major and dramatic shift that can have very powerful impacts on the life of a child. But there are some downsides to it. And I definitely don't want black folk to start jumping out, which I'm gonna be clear, I don't think we are. I don't. I think that news report is just a news report. But I don't want black people to start jumping out of the window thinking homeschooling is going to turn my kid from, a 60 IQ to a 390.
Well, okay. I'm glad you said that. Now, the statistics in the news report, all other things that I've come across, all the other sources that I've come across kind of validate those statistics. That 16% jump, especially during the pandemic, of black people in homeschooling. Now, that's just a 16% jump. That's not saying that the majority of black people are choosing homeschool, right? Mm-hmm. So more, but that's just saying there's been an increase in homeschooling. So looking at the benefits of both, looking at what can you get from both, because I'm glad you talked about the ups and downs of the homeschooling. Well, one of the first things that come to my mind is you got to be able to fund it, right? And so what I'm learning from this Black History School is you need funding.
Yeah.
You need
I didn't
funding.
want to get into funding, but we struggle with funding all the time.
You need it. And also, so you have to have funding, but all parents are not fit to educate. But that's where like the co-ops and things that you talked about come into play. But we will still have to have a change of attitude, change of mindset, a change of programming, because it's going to be more than just putting your child in the homeschool, especially if you are already an inactive parent in your child's education already. Because if
you're an inactive parent, you should not homeschool.
Right. Because in the homeschooling setting, I can imagine that as a parent, you will be a lot more, and you will be expected to, and you'll be a lot more involved. Especially like if you drop your kid off at a co-op or something.
Go ahead, PC.
I totally agree with that, especially because what we have to also know is a lot of the parents academically aren't inclined to the point where they even know the work that's being taught. And based on their academic prowess or lack thereof, and that's no shade, that's just what the reality is. I think you hit on something, you both hit on something with the funding. What I hear is we need more black folks who invest in things that benefit us instead of action for things to be given to us. And that's why when you hear all the people talking about this current administration taking away the Board of Education, the federal Board of Education, or stripping it down, I look at things like this as opportunities for us to take the mantle and take control of the future of our children. I mean, you can't say you love children, you love your children, but you're not willing to invest in their future for the best outcomes.
Well, yes, I agree with you, but I like to throw some logs on the fire. So I'm hearing conversations from black people who are against the dismantling of the Department of Education, and they're going to, looking at how education was, the quality of education was for black people before the Department of Education existed. But I'm like, yeah, but that's still a black, like today that would be an extreme black people problem, because we have more resources, more access to resources and wealth to these days. So why wouldn't we want to take the reins and lead our children into some academic prowess?
Hold on, Joe. What are they saying, that education for black kids has gotten better since the Department of Education was created?
That's what they're hinting at. Education, opportunities, access.
The Department of Education was created in 1979, right?
I'm looking at that right now. Looking at that right now.
Yeah, like, all right, correct me if I'm wrong, but if it was in fact 1979.
1979.
Okay, I can pretty much say with a full body of confidence and all the melanin that comes with it that education is not better now than it was.
Right. Well, okay. So with that being said, there's still a massive uproar from Black people. Of course, we know a lot of it comes from the vitriol against Trump, but a massive uproar against the dismantling or restructuring, whatever you want to call it, of the Department of Education.
Well, then you got to look at too what came with the Department of Education, because that's when you started getting standardized testing. That's when you started getting teaching to the test.
I'm just saying all the things that we don't like that they do. It's like this. It's an indictment. I'm not saying it should. I'm not saying I agree with Trump or anything, but what I am saying is the things that they don't like about the Department of Education are, are helping him want to do it, helping him want to dismantle it.
Well, most Black people have a plantation mentality, though, and so we still believe that the things that are offered to us must come from massa. And,
well, yes, that's the problem.
And we want massa to still have his tools in order to serve us, which never works. But because when you think about all the things people are complaining about, these are things we can take care of ourselves. These are you want to talk about academics. I had a freedom school on my porch for about 4 years.
You sure did.
Where I was teaching children your curriculum from On the Shoulders of Giants. I was teaching them Saturday morning freedom school right on the porch. And I was using curriculums from your books. They had to actually do book reports from your books. You know what I'm saying? And then, our good sister, Cara Poole, and the great Griot, her history lessons. And so we were able to, and that was just me and a good friend of mine, good sister of mine, who was able to help assist and invest by providing food for the project that we were working on with these children. And now you're doing your Saturday school, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, Pat, the biggest problem they have is financial. In terms of, getting people to invest in a program. So, and I understand what we saw was those were well-to-do Black community in Alabama. Because the first time when it came on, I was like, damn, that's a nice house. When it first came on. But they collectively created community. If we talk about being, astute to history, well, if we even go back to the Black Panther Party, right, and their 5-6 year run in the 70s, one of the things they did was they created community health centers, breakfast programs, things that the government stole, right, and others corporate entities stole ideas from them, WIC and all those different programs. This is when Black people were doing for themselves. You had the Nation of Islam, who you agree with their politics, you don't agree with their politics, whatever. But the Nation of Islam also has a school network. And they also but with this, you have community.
Right.
And you get to dictate the curriculum to those children. Now, the draw, and this is why, and I remember we talked about this over a decade ago, which is so ironic that, it's just more proof that we were ahead of our time. Because we were talking about when they were having homeschooling that, y'all there? Okay, y'all just sitting there frozen. I thought my screen.
No, I thought Pat was froze.
No, Pat doing research. We were there talking about the fact that when they first started offering school vouchers, that if Black parents pulled themselves from the schools, because they were even talking back then about changing up the narrative in states like Texas and New Mexico and Arizona about the word slavery and creating terms like involuntary immigrants and stuff like that, that we can take all the elder teachers, not so older teachers who are forced into retirement, bring them out, park children into somebody's garage, invest in the tools and pay them. They might not even ask for a full wage, but just pay them a stipend or whatever to teach the children. Because what I've known about old educators, the older educators, they love teaching.
Well, see, right. You're right. You're exactly right. But the part that pissed me off about all of this is Black people will complain about the state of education. Like what we're going to get into in a little bit, they're talking about, going through TikTok, false narratives are going again, and they're specifically trying to say that Black boys can't read. No, Black children cannot read. But it's an indictment on the parents and the community, right? Because if we have an educational system that we feel is failing our children, and it's failing our children in any way you want failing to mean, right? It's failing our children, but we're sitting back watching it fail our children. Do y'all remember the breakdown we did a while ago of the young man who was promoted all the way to 12th grade and he only had 3 credits? And
but he had a new PS5 or something like that, right?
Right.
PS5, right. Jordans, mom worked 4 jobs. Yeah. In Baltimore.
Yeah. That's a whole communal failure.
Well, in Philadelphia, for I don't know what the numbers are recently, but I know that we went like a whole decade with 0 academic growth, and in terms of, or negative academic growth in terms of the proficiency, math, reading, and writing skill proficiency in the city of Philadelphia, and that speaks to the fact, and they were operating under the Board of Education. And it was,
right. So that would mean homeschooling would only be viable for adults who give a damn. And go ahead.
Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah. I mean, look, we deal with this every year. One of the biggest problems we have every year is funding, which is why now we have a private school. If we were able to get funding for the homeschool and keep it in a homeschool structure, we would definitely love to do that. But that's not viable.
Okay.
So we got to go through other avenues, other means to get funding. Unfortunately, that means shutting up a private school because private schools have access to state funds, not federal funds, state funds. And even that, though, is still beholding you to the government, just the local one. But we have to do that because we can't get funding from Black people in the community. So but all in all, the big problem, and even with that, like I could tell you horror story after horror story after horror story from Black parents showing up on campus trying to fight kids to Black kids telling us that they don't care about what their grades are, and then you give them the grade, and then you find out why they don't care because the parents don't care. Because the other thing is homeschooling, much like, well, even less so than public schooling, because in public school, if your kid is not doing well and the teacher cares, the teacher has steps to incentivize you as a parent to get more involved. It'd be people knocking on your door like, yo, what's up? And if you don't play this game right with us, now we entertaining the thought of taking your kid. Like, that's a real incentive that they have. Now they got to push that button real hard to get that result, but they have the button. In homeschooling, we don't have no button. If you say, I don't care about what my kid do in school, the only button we got is to say your kid can't come back.
Yeah.
How does that benefit your kid or the community that you and your kid live in?
Right.
So if you're in a community filled with a bunch of people that don't care, homeschooling is absolutely not the option for you unless you're going to raise your kids in a bubble in your own home. But then you have to remember a big bulk of the educational process for children is socialization.
Yeah. also, if you don't have, well, if funding is a problem, if the parental will is a problem and funding is a problem, so that means only the privileged kids will be able to attend homeschool.
That's what I was trying to say in a very polite way. Homeschooling is viable for privileged Black kids. That's about it.
Like, but we just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. Like, it is viable for privileged black kids whose parents have the income and can do it.
Yeah, well, income, time, and the will.
Yep.
Because you got to have the will to see it through, and our priorities as a community is, party now, pay for it later. Collectively speaking, we may have, we do have exceptions to that, but it is what it is right now, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. One of the other things we could think about too is creating Saturday programs. But just like we said, they still need investment and funding. Too often we feel like we can filibuster our way through everything. If we talk enough shit, gotta write that down, Joe. Say it like
it's just one. You good.
Okay. But if we talk enough, but we feel like we can literally talk our way, like we can throw enough game at a situation to pimp it without putting anything out for it. And that's why we get the lowest quality of any type of return on investment, because if we're not getting it would mean more to me if I had your children on a Saturday, if you didn't just drop them off and treat me like a babysitter. You know what I'm saying? Because that has happened many times where, sometimes the kids, the children would show up and I would feel bad because they're sad looking at me because they know that their parents ain't worth a damn in some cases, but I care about them, so I'm going to take care of them. I can't punish the children for the sins of the parents. And so oftentimes we find ourselves in this situation, but it stretches us real thin.
Well, yeah.
And everybody has a threshold, and you can only care as much as the people that you're working for care in terms of their own personal development, betterment, and so forth. And for too many people, too many of our people, they just like getting over. Well, and they like getting over on us because they don't respect us enough. They don't respect our culture. They don't respect us enough to actually treat it with the type of respect it deserves, considering how important the job of an educator is to your children. Now, I'm not talking about the ones who got their certificates and they graduated and they're using this as because they're looking forward to all the extra time to get off, summer vacations, or some schools have like a 12-week block and then 4 weeks off. Like they get a lot of time off, so it's beneficial there. But I'm talking about the people who actually emerge their blood, sweat, and tears because they care about the children. And for a lot of parents, unfortunately, they see this situation as a way to pass the buck and the responsibility of raising their children.
Yep.
The people who are willing to sacrifice their time and energy for their children. And it's unfortunate because you're stuck in a catch-22.
That's why our kids can't read.
Well, yeah, but and it's not a priority to.
Right.
Right. Children can't write in cursive. Like I didn't know.
They stopped teaching that a long time ago.
Right. When I was teaching, you had to write in cursive.
They still teach that at the school I work at. At my school, they still teach that.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, because of who y'all are.
Right.
But children nowadays, they can't even write they can't even sign a paycheck these days.
And let me say this: we still teach cursive Not because kids need to know how to write in cursive. We already know in another decade or two, kids ain't gonna need to know how to write, period. But it does two things. One, fine motor control. Not all education is about whether or not you're going to use it in the future. Sometimes it's about learning how to use your body in different ways, right? The other way is it exposes them to new information that allows them to connect things in different ways. And you get that when you start to critically think about how people put letters together in cursive. The whole thing is strung together. So now when I'm explaining the concept to a child and I can use that reference and they can understand that reference, that's another point of reference that we can share insofar as connecting information. So, and really there are more than just those two ways, but I think those are two of the biggest ways. And we forget, like, learning is a total body activity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, how we go about processing, expressing, and all of these other things matters. And having multiple ways to communicate matters. And being able, and even the confidence boost that comes from knowing how to write your name in cursive. Mm-hmm. And saying, this is my signature. All of that stuff matters. But I think, again, we go back to, because I grew up a lot the way PC described it. Like, I went to a public school, but I still have book reports due at home. Like, my mom was still like, you're gonna read this book, you're gonna write me a book report, and it better be good. But the wonderful thing was my mom read the books too, and she read the book reports, and she took it seriously. And it didn't matter what I got on my report card if the book report I gave to her was ass. Like, so it was like, if you're that type of parent, homeschooling is not going to be a problem for you.
Right.
But if you're looking for a glorified babysitter, then you're the problem.
Yeah. I mean,
one time, real quick, Joe, just to tag onto what Pat said. One time I had to teach, and I just started thinking about this because you do so much. Sometimes you forget about some of the things you've done. When I was teaching in high school, they had a Saturday program. It was more like a detention program, but it was also for students who were struggling. Now, they put me in there as a math teacher on a Saturday. Now, if you give me a history book or a history lesson, I can run right through that. But math, I wasn't the greatest math instructor or math learner. So, but I learned something in that process where, and this is where too, like, knowing the culture helps you educate your children.
Yeah.
The children struggle with understanding the basic concepts of algebra. They didn't know how to transfer what the variable was and the values were in a math problem. But I had to teach them that they use algebra all the time. So when they asked me, what do you mean? I said, well, what's 2x, what's 5x? The equation of 5x equals 20. What's x? Equals 100. I don't know. I said, so what's 5 dubs? Oh, that's 100. I said, so replace the x with dubs. What's a pound, 2 stacks, and a half a man? They ran that up. The answer was, they didn't have to even write it down. And so when one of the parents came up to their graduation ceremony, this woman was very angry with me because she said, man, sir, I did not send my child here every Saturday for him to learn street slang. So I broke down, I put math problems up on the board. I told her son, figure that out. He went up to the board, boop, 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 boop. She was like, I said, because all I had to do was teach them. I had to make it write the math problem in the language they understood. Once they understood the language, they were able to understand this variable is just like this variable. And so now they're able to understand what a variable is. It simplified the process for them. It's like teaching them another language. They know it in their language, but they don't know it in this language. So you give them something to transfer it over. And that's one of the benefits of being from their culture. and teaching it, which can also be a plus as in a homeschool environment. And homeschooling doesn't have to be an isolated thing. It could be a shared experience with other members of the homeschooling networks. But like I said, we point out that the areas that there's going to be a struggle, because without struggle there's no real gains.
Right.
So, but I was just trying to think back to some of the experiences I had in a similar, but not necessarily homeschool, but a similar situation.
Man, I've had several experiences like that teaching. Because like you say, it's about being able to connect, but you got to know how to teach, and you got to have that will and the creativity and all these different things as well. But that's what pisses me off about the overall outcome that Black children get in these school settings, in the school systems, because parents and teachers are failing Black children. And when I'm scrolling and I'm seeing video after video after video of Black women trying to go in on Black boys and saying Black boys can't read, but overlooking they're telling half the story. Young Black girls can't read either. No, they can't read either, right? No, but think about the conversation we're having, right? Why would young Black boys and young Black girls know how to read if their parents refuse to teach them? Especially nowadays, if they're just handing them phones, tablets, putting them in front of the computer, TV, just using all these different outlets to keep the child busy. Because there's a small percentage of these parents who are actually really pouring in their children on a regular basis within our community.
Mm-hmm. And and there are two things with that, right? Because you bring two great points. First one, right? People just hand their children the tablets and the phones. What's frustrating to me about that is this is a device that actually could be used as a powerful tool for learning.
Teach your child to read.
Like, even with my daughter, I totally disagree with children having cell phones. But in my situation, she has one because she needs one, right? We text. Not text talk, like full sentence text. Read this text, reply to this text with a text of your own with full sentences. That requires reading, comprehension, and the ability to write back. We're working on that. She's 5.5 years old. Why aren't so when I see kids with these devices, and especially in the schools, we have what we call the sacred seeker in all of my classes. It's the one person in the class that's allowed to have a cell phone or a piece of technology. And the sole thing they can do with it is look up information for group projects. They're the only person allowed to do it, the sacred seeker. When I see the sacred seeker, I'll say, hey, what's the element that causes stars to die when they start creating it? Siri, what's it? You're not the sacred seeker no more. Who's next? Then we go to the next person. They try to whisper it. What's that? You're not the sacred secret no more. Matter of fact, give me $50. Both of y'all, give me $50. Who's next? And we do that until somebody finally understands, oh, Mr. P wants us to actually type it out. Yes, I do. Type it out. Read it. And then read the response. Comprehend it. Don't have Siri read it back to you. Right. I don't understand why that's so complicated. But then the other great point you made was the point that centers around the stats. Because I've seen Black homeschoolers use these stats, and I'm not opposed to the usage of these stats. What I am opposed to is the failure to acknowledge what's happening within the stats. They'll say Black children that are homeschooled are more successful than Black children that go to public schools. The reason for that must be because they're homeschooled. No, that's not the reason for that. The reason for that is because that homeschool kid more often than not had an involved parent.
Right. Their parents give a damn.
Yeah.
So we need to start having that serious conversation. It matters, yes.
Well, that's the main problem with the education system. Not enough parents put it down.
Exactly. An involved parent is going to yield better results in terms of their children's academics than an uninvolved parent. School system be damned.
Right.
Yeah. And here's another aspect of this too, because we're gonna have to start really taking responsibility for the shapes of our families. If you are in a situation right now where you say, well, I don't have time, I have too many children, I don't have any help with my children, we have to start using those as cautionary tales for the future generations. I am so sick and tired of the generational curse being I was young. I'm so sick and tired of somebody telling us that we have time before we create families and we don't have to be married to have children. I am so tired of all those things, because when the poop hits the fan, all the excuses that come from not preparing for these situations is why, what leads to the cause to the struggle and the strife that these situations are. And if you talk about them victim blaming, what I'm saying is stop recreating new victims.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, because this is a cultural thing in our community. And I mean, you want to talk about what our ancestors died for. One of the first things our ancestors died for was learning how to read. Because we hear at every election, our ancestors died so we can vote. They died for your black ass to read too.
Yep.
They did that first.
And for families to be together. They literally died to be a part of a family.
Man, the first thing that happened at the end of the Civil War was people leaving their plantations to find their loved ones, to find husbands looking to find their wives. Wives trying to be found by their husbands, looking for their children.
Yep. I just did a story on Wednesday about that with Aunt Clara Brown, who spent her life looking for her daughter, Eliza Jane. So yeah.
So
talked about that in my book too.
Yeah. That's where I remembered it from. The chasm. Yeah, no, man. It's behind something. I was gonna pull it out. There you go, Joe. So we gotta fix the culture, and we gotta stop. We gotta stop making low-hanging fruit, low vibration, the baseline for our culture. We got to raise the level of functioning and understanding. And I understand that the whole concept behind critical thinking is a struggle, because most people, just like common sense, they just can't do it. They don't have the aptitude for it. You smoke enough, you drink enough, you won't have the aptitude to think critically.
And don't do that, PC.
Bro, I'm just saying, man, listen. I mean, some people don't do either one, but they still don't have the aptitude. You can only imagine, if you have an impaired mind, how you want to struggle with to be able to have to understand concepts and breaking it down and thinking about the pros and cons of every situation that you're in. So, and those are things too. Mathematics teaches you how to compartmentalize. It teaches you how to organize, teaches you orders of function. It teaches you those methods. So, I mean,
didn't you share the video about the young lady cheating through college?
Yes. Yes. And not only cheating, she went out and did a promotional for other people to learn how to cheat through college. And what's so fascinating about it is I'm not going to get into the comment section. I actually know a woman, right? I know at least one person. I probably know more. They just never admit it. But I know a sister that she used to be the one they paid to write their papers.
Oh, I know one of them too.
Right. So
still getting paid.
Right. So this is like this. When you think about this, it makes sense that all these people out here in the real world that has jobs and functions, but they don't know what the hell they're doing?
I experience it all day, every day. But once again, that's an indictment on us and why our children are behind academically, and it's not necessarily getting better. I'm gonna keep reinforcing it. Black children, boys and girls, are not reading at proficient levels. Both. Tell the whole story. Don't just tell half. Tell the whole story. Because it's the adult's fault. If you are an adult, it's your fault. We are all a part of this failure. Even those of us who've been doing what we're supposed to do. It's a collective failure, right? And yeah, we know rotten apples spoil the bunch, but that's how it is. Rotten Negroes spoil the coach. So here we are. So we got to do better.
So are we homeschooling or no?
Well, I'm homeschooling.
But you never said why. You left the cliffhanger.
I want to homeschool because, for one, I will have the means to. I give a damn, and I believe I could do a better job of teaching my child than the teachers can within the public school system or any other those school systems. You know, I'm gonna be honest. I was in the 3rd grade and I thought my teacher was trash. And from then, I'm serious. I wanted to teach my own children since I was in 3rd grade because I was like, she trash and I can do better. So I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Worked in the 3rd grade and know your teacher's trash.
Because preschool, 1st grade, preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, I'm learning. Teachers are good. I'm learning. 3rd grade, I'm not learning. 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, I'm learning. Not all the teachers, but the majority of the teachers I'm learning. But also, that was the first time that I had a white woman as a teacher as well in my life. So,
well, but that gets to be interesting too, because we get into styles of teaching, right? Like not styles of teaching, but teaching techniques. Maybe you didn't learn because you weren't exploring your inner self enough.
Yeah, you know what? As a 3rd grader, you know, I should have been proficient in self-exploration. You're right.
But that does speak to something else, though. 94% of public school teachers were white women throughout the country. And I learned that when the LeBron James Promise School came out. And I did and I checked because over 95% of those teachers were white women in his school. So, but when you think about that and the cultural prejudice that white women have towards black boys, you start to see there was a survey that stated that white women see black boys as older than white boys. And when you start to really think about the characteristics of that, then you can understand the types of atrocities and abuses because it goes back to that slave narrative where when you're black, you can endure more pain. You can endure more punishment. And
that's that superhero stuff. That's how
right. Yeah. And also something we didn't talk about was the fact that a lot of these women started having inappropriate sexual relations with these young boys too.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of that been coming out lately in the news.
Yeah, it's coming out lately, but it's been going on for a long time. So, you know, these are some of the things that you know, when we talk about taking ownership of our community again, we need to start really doing it. I get tired of the boule class, and I'm not, you know, especially when they speak to politics and they want to do things because their agenda is not necessarily based in good faith and good works for the black community. Their agendas are tied to other things that benefit them specifically, various talking points and
like
so
Kamala
forth.
Harris.
Right. So when you have them out there being the mouthpieces, and most people just follow all leads, if they feel like you're a person that speaks with authority or a person that's in authority, then you have a lot of people following blindly. You know, these what do you call them? These bad actors, these bad faith actors who are not teaching, not talking and speaking to the opportunities that we have to self-regulate and self-actuate in terms of what we can be doing as a people. And then when we do that, you feed and foster people based on hopes of being saved by the enemies, the very enemies that profit off of us being in these pitiful positions. So I don't like the disingenuous nature of a lot of these mouthpieces out there when they're speaking to people who, if they knew better, they would understand they're being played, but they don't know better. And so they go along because the wealth class typically is the leadership class of every community. And so I think that we struggle with that. And like I said, it really bothers me because the way the manipulation takes place is right in front of us. This is psychology 101, creating a whole concept around propaganda and groupthink, and without ever really establishing the basis or the true agenda at hand. So I'm just want to end my plane there because we probably talk for another hour on that.
Hey man, well, black women and black men for Kamala, I guess y'all got a new mission: funding schooling.
They funded that shit.
I'm just saying. Y'all got it.
Hey, so. Our number one funders are white people.
That is damn shame. Black folk, we gotta do better. And remember, if you don't like my video, you ain't black. If you don't hit that like button, you ain't black. You better hit that like button.
All 5% are more, are Egyptian, are descendants of American slave ADOS, or
Moorish and
all that.
All that stuff. You ain't all the variations of black. All the variations of black. You don't do it. You have to do your finger. You gotta do your hand like that when you say it.
Nah, I was just trying to recreate, the PC effect at the end. That's all, bro, brother.
Man. Y'all be cool. Y'all make sure y'all support everybody up on here. Thank you to everybody who continuously supports us. Hold up, let me give a quick shout out.
Definitely. Me Kim.
Hey, appreciate you. You already know it. I got another shout out real quick from another young lady. Make sure I get
Joe, you getting the young ladies out? Joe, they better watch out, bro.
Thank you. I want to give a big shout out to Monica Morris. I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Big shout out,
Monica Morris, for the support. Thank you very much. And for everybody else, if you want to continue to support us or even start to support us, the links are in the description to support us. FetLifeStation.com. Make sure you check it out. FetLifeStation.com, thepax.org, and ontheshoulders1.com. Make sure you check it out. And once again, to support, links are in the description. Catch y'all on the other side and teach our kids. Stop playing.